Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Hill and Brothers podcast. I'm your co-host Brandon Jones, and I am joined by the legendary Sam Simmons. What's going on, Sam?
Not much, man. Not much. Um, you know, Usual stuff. Long week. You know, Trying to recover from my short-lived vacation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and still trying to catch up with calls and stuff. And I don't know. It's just been so much that's been the same, and not in a good way. That I don't know. There's days I feel less and less hopeful that there's going to be change or improvement for the community,
Mm-hmm.
and then I regain it dealing with some of the young people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Hopelessness setting in.
Oh, is that all you heard? See that?
No,
See
no,
it?
no. It stood out. It stood out. Let's just say it stood out. No, I feel you. I mean, you've been doing this work longer than I've been alive, man, and I get it because it can be tireless and frustrating, especially when you see a lot of regression amongst the community. I don't, it's like we get one or two moments of I guess hope or just a victory. You have your individuals who do something well or stand out, etc., and then it's just flooded with all the negative stuff right afterwards. So it's hard to keep pushing forward when there's a lot of confusion in the community and then just a lot of trauma.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point about you know uh, that whole adage: one step forward, two steps back, kind of thing, right?
Right.
In having not having the approach evolve, I
Right.
guess I think is what it really boils down to. You know, using old timey arguments for the same problem and then expecting it to be different, right? Like here in Minnesota, the big talk is about what charter question. I think they call it a charter question. Number two, here in Minneapolis about uh, uh, answering yes or no to developing a what is it? Department of Community Safety,
Yeah.
replacing that, using that instead of just a plain Department of Police.
Right.
And watching some of the footage in terms of the arguments of both sides, and if you listen long enough, once you get past, because the thing is the big question is in the charter, it is not clear to people if there's going to police are still going to exist.
Right.
But in the state charter, police will always exist.
Hmm.
You can't really get rid of police. The police department. The worry will. You lose the police chief. A lot of folks like our current police chief as well as I do,
Yeah.
right? And once you get past that piece, then you find that everybody's saying the same thing, right? It
Which
ain't
is,
working, huh?
yep.
It
I
ain't
said,
working,
which is what? Yep, it ain't
right?
working.
It ain't working the way it is right now, right? And that something got to be different. We need to involve more people in the process, like mental health professionals, social workers, right? Uh, uh, and so it's like, uh, for me, being a voter, it's up in the air for me. I could go either way, right? Because it's really, and I think the biggest piece is, I think on the yes side is, well, so if you're going to replace, what's the plan? What does that look like? Right.
Right.
And even the other side, what's the plan? Right. What does that look like? you know, because the thing is interesting. We always know what we don't want, or at least we think we know what we don't want, right? But what do we want? And what does that look like? And what are we
Mhm.
willing to give to make that happen?
But haven't we given enough? We built this country, Sam.
All right, well, when I say willing to give, you know what? I'm about tired of you.
What else can we give? Blood, sweat, and tears, red, black, and green, brother.
Hey, I'm talking about in strategies. Because the thing is one thing we do, you talk about what we've given. Well, we know we continue to use the same strategies over and
Exactly.
over again, right? So there's
That were
got to be
given
some
that were given to us, by the way. If we want to
right.
be honest about those.
Yeah. And then when we look at like the issues around gun violence in the community, that kind of stuff, we almost take on the narrative from the mainstream and run with it, right? We're still stuck in talking about, gangs and that kind of stuff, that kind of thing, which is the important narrative to the mainstream, because when they decide they had enough of this noise, that gives, because now you got an enemy, right? And you know how
Sure.
America, got to build up an enemy to go on and, because we got this kind of war mentality,
Mhm.
which ain't gonna be good for the community in the bigger picture,
Mhm.
right? If when they get tired of losing, believing they're losing money, you got people talking about they don't want to come in the cities. You had the situation with the young person getting shot during a football game and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And that was like a lot of them were from Brooklyn Center, but they was in the city.
Mhm.
Now they're talking about not ever doing those games for the young people in the city no more. You got people talking about they don't want to go downtown and the other kind of. So when that money piece start getting real raw,
Yeah.
it's like it's on and
Action.
popping.
Yeah. Action takes place.
Yeah, but the issue is the action that will get dictated long as we can come up and identify like one enemy is going to be, you're going to get this like war type mentality. It's like the war on drugs. Once you put that word war in, it's on and popping, and we ain't trying to hear nothing about showing anybody no compassion or any of that kind of stuff, right? And we're not looking at the big picture, and looking at the
Mhm.
big picture externally or internally, right?
Mhm.
So we even did a radio show on it on Friday, and the guest, uh eloquent, talked about the systems, talked about housing and all the other kind of things. And then when I would question, so okay, I agree with you, so what are we going to do as a community, because that stuff ain't changing anytime soon, and
Right.
we can't wait for that stuff to change. And I think we got more power in our community internally. It's difficult, right, to change the dialogue, right? I know that if I change how I battle you, you will pay me more attention, one way or the other, right? But if I battle you from a victim position, I'm going to treat you like one.
Yeah.
And I brought this up yesterday in another piece I did yesterday in terms of a Facebook Live piece.
Mhm.
And that's a hard piece, right? Because there's some serious things within the community we need to do that are not popular to move forward in this. Because again, what community is suffering, especially here in Minnesota, and I believe is all around the country, right? That is really being hurt the most by gun violence, is the Black community here, right? It,
Gun violence is a African American Black ADOS problem. Let's just be honest.
right,
That's what it is.
right.
It is not just Twin Cities. It's across the country,
Oh,
man.
absolutely.
Bad.
Absolutely. Because I had a conversation with a brother. I just called, there's like one or two folks that work for Hennepin County that I stay in contact with, right? To check on them. I got this long list of young leaders and workers who stay in contact with me. So I check on them every now and then, even though I'm ornery and grouchy and say I ain't trying to be nobody's mentor and that kind of stuff. So I called the young man out of the clear blue. He called me back, and he had lost his phone. He said, I lost my contacts. And he calls and says, who is this? And I told him who I was. He was like thrilled. And then we talked about what's going on in Hennepin County, or what's not going on in Hennepin County to address these issues, right? And then he switched it on me and started talking about he went home for a wedding. He's from Baltimore.
Oh,
right?
Ooh, yeah.
And how the depressing it was, right? And he grew up during the wire era, right? So it was ugly back then, right? I mean, it was like the microcosm of what was going on around the country and those types of cities, and how traumatized it was for him and his mother, going back, and he never had seen that before, right? And really appreciated. He says, man, I didn't, I was trying to, it really hurt me to see the trauma in my mama's eyes when we went back, and places they used to go is no longer there. And found out about some things she experienced as being working for the city, and learned some stuff about things that happened traumatically. He said, but she never talked about it before. Right. Yeah. And I said, we do that. We wear our trauma, and we're not going to share that with our kids because we done been conditioned that we have to wear this stuff and not deal with this stuff, right? And it caught up with her, and it scared him, right? And he was overwhelmed, and I talked with him. He says, I'm so glad you called, because I didn't know who to talk to this about. Right. And I told him the fact that you just, you supported her, you responded to her anxiety, and kept her calm, and didn't overly question, you just listened, and that kind of thing. And sometimes that's all we can do, and recognize that this is an experience of a lot of older adults. Is we don't share this stuff with our kids, but our bodies can only hold it for so long. Right. And it was a great talk. And the thing is, our conversation, and that's I think the hopeful thing when I talk about younger folks. And when you're old as me, a lot of folks are younger, because you could be in your 40s and still younger than me, right? and that kind of stuff. That they're asking the questions, right? And they're recognizing it, and trying to, as bad as it sounds, normalize how we have been conditioned not to recognize and acknowledge our trauma, and how important it is to do that, because that also brings that humanity to us that we accuse other people of taking from us, right? Because being a human being, and being a human being in pain, not acknowledging that pain doesn't allow us to experience our whole humanity, to get to the other side of it, right? That something has happened to us, and there's something that is happening to me physically and emotionally around that, and it's just been interesting to have these conversations, and at least having young people listen, right? They're always, man, Mr. Simmons, that's deep, Well, yeah, but the thing is for me, luckily for me, it ain't deep. It's just real for me, which makes
honest.
it right. Yeah. Which makes it easy for me to talk about it. Right. Which is always funny too, Yeah, we got Mr. Simmons here today. I don't know how we got him here today, but y'all getting ready to hear some stuff that they're gonna shake y'all tree, and it's like, calm down, don't be doing all that. I said, you do know there's a price I pay when y'all geek me up like that. What do you mean? I said, there's people out here who get real upset when you geek me up like that, and come at me. because it's like who, it's like out of clear blue. Who do you think you is, nigga? It's like
Yeah. More
I'm just
trauma.
I'm just Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, I ain't said nothing about the silliness you've been talking about.
Right.
I mean, I don't have time to attack you, right? Matter of fact, I think in our community we feel better if somebody attack us, and so we can play victim to folks or whatever. But I ain't got time to attack nobody.
Mhm.
I really don't. I will attack behavior, and I will do the best of I can to explain my position, right? And really also try to come up with a solution, or have that position identify some type of solution or a road map to get to a solution if I can. Uh, uh, if and one of the things I've learned and realized recently is there's some things I've said in the past that I realized wasn't correct,
Mhm.
right? That wasn't correct. I
Mhm.
mean, not fully correct. It was portions of it correct, but but the more information I get, the more I can correct those things, the more I can go forward with them. The more I can say, yes, I did say that, but with more information, understanding, and awareness, I need to make adjustments.
Right.
Because adjustments is part of life.
Right.
And trauma gets in the way of us making adjustments,
Mhm.
right? We want to say the word change, all or nothing, but I think it's adjustments. Even when you're talking about trauma, am I still traumatized by my past? Yes, but I've made adjustments so that
Right.
trauma does not have as much bearing on the decisions I make in the future. Do they creep up every now and then? Yes, but I've learned to be aware of those,
Right.
and not be afraid of them, right? And so uh I don't know. It's just been a little bit, so at times frustrating. But when I talk to young folks, like the show I did yesterday in the barbershop, which was fun, you know, even though I didn't want to go because I don't leave the basement much, and folks was like actually surprised. You left the basement, yeah, and I ain't happy. So and I made that clear, before we went on the camera, and I'm glad I did it. You know, yeah. Even though at the time I didn't want to on the Saturday too.
Yeah.
Right, man. I don't even like getting dressed on Saturday. Or putting some scruffy clothes on. Maybe do a chore around the house because I got to let my brain get some rest.
Right.
On the weekend. And then muster up enough energy to do this at 3 o'clock on Sundays.
Yeah.
So uh, uh, it's exhausting. It brings up a story kind of on a side note. My grandson was here,
Mhm.
and kids. One thing about kids, I noticed that every I might see him, every 4 weeks or whatever, and that kind of stuff. The little Negro look different every time I see him, because he's still growing. One minute he got a little
Yeah.
pot belly, next minute he's thin as a rail, and he's
Yeah.
in there talking about I need to check my weight, which is always a flag. What do you mean you need to check your weight?
Mhm.
He said, "Man, I need to know, am I gaining any muscle? I'm doing a weight training,
Mm.
and I'm trying to get some muscle, and
Mhm.
I ain't at the right number. You got some weights around here?" I said, "I don't need no weights."
Mhm.
Well, it's like, don't you do weight training? No, I didn't even do weight training when I coming up. I a little fat kid.
Mhm.
It's like that wasn't my forte.
Yeah.
He said, "Aren't you worried about your muscles?" And I pointed at my head. You see this muscle right here? I work this muscle every day, right? And now you working my muscle right now. Well, with your little questions about your little weight training. He just cracked up. He said, "Yeah, you got a big head." It's like, okay, you need to go upstairs now.
How old is he now?
16. Yeah,
16.
yeah. He the oldest boy, you know. Yeah, 16. Because I have time keeping track of them, but they're all kind of a couple years
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
But it turned. There was a time when the young man had me scared.
Mhm.
I mean, because he was out there.
Mhm.
Let you show that them transitions that kids go through and that kind of
Happen.
stuff. Turn into a really good young man, right?
Yeah.
But there was a time during that early teens, man, I was scared of the boy, because I used to tell him, because he used to say real crazy stuff to me, man. And I say stuff like, man, you scare me that I think I need to have a gun under my blanket, you know, which is, inappropriate, but
Yeah.
I meant it, but that kind of thing. But yeah. So so what else, Mr. Young Man? What else? I know
No,
we
I think
had go ahead.
I was gonna say I think we can stay on this train of thought. I know we did have another topic, but let's keep this going because I think that you said a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, and I think the response that these younger community activists and professional folks are saying to you really highlights one of our bigger issues that we have in our community is we don't have enough people really just being honest about what's happening and and framing it in a way that takes the blame out.
Right.
Because I think that's one of the keys. I I spent time in college campus environments, nonprofit environments, social service environments, and there's always someone to blame, which goes back to what you were saying before about the enemy. And when we get caught in those thought processes, it really takes the accountability and responsibility off of oneself to do something different and just says, well, that's person or those people are the problem, or this system is the problem. So that's where the change is, not with the making adjustments with myself. It's that thing when it can be a both and,
Right.
or it could just be you.
Right.
I mean, sometimes the solution is just something you need to do different, but we are not encouraged to think like that as young people. It doesn't happen on the college level. It doesn't happen on the high school level. It doesn't happen in the social service workplace levels either. It just becomes very victimy, and you can be a victim and also do something. You don't have to
Right.
be a victim that's passive, and I think that that's what's missed. So when people encounter someone like yourself who's telling them, the full spectrum, it really puts the responsibility back in that person's hands to do something different. And that's just something that we don't get. We don't get it in churches. We don't get it out here in the media. We just don't get it. We just get find that enemy and zone in and scope down on that person or those people, and that's where the change happens. And I think that that's dangerous for us because we're talking about the people that you're interacting with. These are the people who can make the change in the community happen. They have the fortitude, they have the education, they have the position sometime to really do something different, but they're all thinking from the same position.
But I think that we cannot, at least I refuse to put this just on young people, because my generation have um done this well, right? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of our activism, because we were victims. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and still victims of the system. Okay, don't get it wrong. Don't get me wrong, right?
Sure.
And when you're always fighting, you often have heard me say, we know how to fight, but we don't know how to win. And because we've always been fighting. We've been fighting from day one. We've been fighting literally physically. We've definitely been fighting emotionally, and we've been fighting spiritually from day one, right? Even if it's fighting from the standpoint of having a system or society to recognize our humanity, right? Over and above the position that many of us was brought here for, and being and how our system did such a great job to its own detriment around this issue around race, right? And to keep uh people in power and keep people rich, right? It's like the enemy piece is a a smoke screen for the rich, because everybody's an enemy to the rich who ain't helping them make no money. And at times it don't matter, even though a lot of those rich folks are racist. Don't get it wrong.
Mhm.
But they don't think a lot of folks who look like them, right? And so it's just so complicated that way. But the other piece that we see a lot of, and I recognized this long time ago, is when you have a victim who use their victimization as power.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Use their victimization as power,
Right.
right? But having power from a victim position is very difficult to fight.
Right.
Very difficult to fight. You know what I'm saying? And that victim from a power position is like, so you get a person who's totally wrong, but they're in the victim group, whatever that group is, and be wrong and be
Mm.
abusive. Be abusive. You know what I'm saying? And and
Right.
then, and then and then when you try to hold them accountable, well, I'm a victim. Hell,
Mm.
you wrong.
Right.
And in a more simpler sense, that my mama was good at that, right?
Mm.
My mama was victimized by the community she grew up in. I mean, you talk about sexist communities. Go to a projects,
Mm.
okay? Grow up in the projects, right? She was victimized by my father's lack of understanding of himself, trying to find his own place as a man, as a
Mm.
black man in America, trying to find a way to feel like he was in power somewhere because the system was letting him know every which way how he didn't have no power on his job and that kind of stuff. And then you had an outspoken mother who used her victimization as a child as a weapon, right? She would do some stuff, it would say stuff to you that would cut
Mm.
deep. And it's like,
Yeah.
mama, why would you do that? And she look at you like, baby, why are you doing this to me?
Mm.
It's like, what are you talking about? Why you would do your mama like that? How you fight that?
Yeah.
You know? And we see this with many different groups right now. But so I don't necessarily put that whole kind of attitude just on young people, because they're still trying to find a way, right?
Right.
And they've had old examples, but and so again, how do you support them without overly criticizing them at the same time, right?
Right.
Because you don't want them to not speak,
Right.
and that's kind of the way, I run my groups the same thing. I say, when we talk about these topics, I want to know how you feel. Well, this might not, and then they'll start, well, this might not be right, or this might not sound
The
right.
disclaimers.
I didn't ask you all that.
Yeah. Just say what you gotta say.
Yeah. Now I might not agree, and I might look at you all sideways when you say it, But let's because what you say is how you feel. What come out your mouth will tell me a lot about why you did what you did to get
Right.
you in my group, right? And you believe that, right? And you know what's so interesting about that? Education don't change that.
Sure don't.
Education don't change. It was a statement made that the belief is that now they done put crack cocaine in the pills and they're giving it to the black people, and I ain't never heard that one before. And it's like, ooh,
And what pills?
whatever pills out here in the street, people
Oh no,
overdosing on.
that's fentanyl in those pills,
I
and that
know,
ain't
but
that ain't got nothing to do with black people. That's where the drug market is
yeah,
right now.
but no, I'm just saying. Okay.
But again, that's that power from a victim position. Now that the fentanyl has hit the inner city market a lot harder, because we know people in the rural areas been catching hell for years now. Now,
Oh
now it's
well,
a racist thing.
yeah, well, but the issue is, but think about it. You talk about the rural area. One of the things, because the topic we had yesterday was on opioids, right?
Yeah.
In the opioid crisis, how it affects the black community, and and it was great information given by one of my colleagues, Pearl, who did a great job of explaining and how to deal with that. And one of the things they asked me about the history, because I have a history in chronic pain, and what do you think chronic pain? How did that play into this opioid epidemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in 2005 or I think it was 2007, there was an article in one of the major magazines talking about hillbilly heroin,
Mm-hmm.
disrespecting people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had these pharmacies that was giving out opioids
Mhm.
in rural areas, coal mining areas where jobs
Yep.
were decreasing, basically a depressed environment.
Right.
Okay. And we do know, if you understand pain, depression, a hopelessness can show up in your body and
Right.
show up as pain.
Right.
Okay. But the idea of naming it hillbilly heroin diminished, right, people's seriousness,
Right.
right? So we're talking about 2007. When did we start taking this stuff serious? It was a problem then, right?
Yeah, like around 2015.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, the other thing about that, when we want to talk about race, is I worked in chronic pain. Do you understand how many hoops that a black person had to go through to get pain medication during that period? Because
Right.
every time a black person talk about their pain and want medication, they automatically would treat them like they were addicts.
Right. Yep. This is the
And that
90s,
include,
right?
right. Well,
Mm.
actually, the 90s, early 2000s, because I was working in the area, right?
Mhm.
Even um 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 what is the blood disease that
Leukemia,
no
sickle
sickle
cell.
cell. Yeah,
Mhm.
sickle cell episodes would be very painful, and you would have to increase the amount of medication to get through the episode, right?
Right.
These folks would go to emergency room and the doctors would question them.
Lupus. Yeah. Mm.
Well, we got lupus, but the big one at that time, where they were having a lot of problems and still do, is the sickle cell. Because
Right.
again, sickle cell is quite painful, and if you're having an episode, it's very painful, and you need more
Yeah. Relief.
medication to get through the episode. And they would question. I used to have to go to emergency room. I had one of my best friends who, God bless his soul, who was overcome by his sickle cell. That's how I got involved with that. He would go to the emergency room and they would just harass him.
Mm.
And it's like, oh no, y'all got, and luckily I was working with a doctor. Call the doctor up, like, look, doc, you need to call these people to get this man his medication.
Mm.
And this was somebody who didn't like using medication, right? So I remember I heard a lecture on opioids where this white professional said, well, you black folks in the audience should be glad we didn't prescribe y'all pain medications like we did whites. He bragged about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen pieces on that where people, pretty much racism actually worked in our favor as far as the opioid epidemic because of the attitudes of these physicians and not wanting to prescribe pain medications to black
Oh,
folks. And that is, which there is some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. It's true.
And no, it's true. But the idea that you're going to brag about it,
Yeah,
right?
the arrogance, right? The white supremacy starts to creep to the top.
Right. But the other piece is there was documentation that tried to say that black folks could actually, again, handle more pain, more physical pain than whites, was another reason they used for not prescribing medication. Think about that. Which also ties in, and people would argue with this, that whole resiliency thing.
Yeah.
When you are given credit for being able to handle more pain than everybody else, that can backfire on you too.
Yeah.
So, but even the response to that, right? The response to crack cocaine had no compassion. None. None.
Right.
So, and then you get this compassion for the mothers on opioids and how do we help them keep their kids and all. They were taking kids from mothers in terms of the crack era. Right. And so when we did start having more problems with opioids in the black community, folks were scared to go get help. Or there's a Sumerian law, that there's a law that if you are with somebody who's having an overdose, call the police and you won't get arrested. Right? Black folks are like, oh yeah, right. But see, the key to that is, what I learned is, if you had less than 3 grams of drugs on you, right? So when there's always a clause in there,
Sure.
that always becomes suspect, right? And so we've had situations. There was initially in 2017, although this has changed, I found out over the period. 2017, there was data that was hid or wasn't public that, in terms of overdoses, African Americans weren't at that time experiencing more overdoses than whites. It was still high, but they were dying at a higher rate from them overdoses. Because an overdose don't necessarily mean death.
Right.
Okay. And nobody really knew that. Right. And so that information wasn't being shared. And one of the ways that I started getting involved more around the opioid piece was to give out information to the Black community. And when you say opioids, Black folks are like, what do you mean opioids? Now, if you say, let them know that heroin is an opioid too. Oh, I get that. Because heroin been an issue in our community off and on since the 70s. Right. So information is an important piece too in terms of addressing disparities and making change. So, we might feel like we are helpless in some areas, but information, addressing your own internal kind of stuff, believe it or not, will actually put pressure on the powers to be. The more you do that, the more they can't just ignore you. At least that's been my personal experience, right? In terms of systems, I don't trust systems. But the issue is I've learned over time, people say, well, the system don't treat you the same way they treat us. That's because I don't deal with them the same way you deal with them, right? Sure. One is I have no problem telling them no. Because people, when I do my lectures full of what I believe is truth, I've had people of color, specifically Black folks, say to me, you don't care what you say to white folks. And I'm like, what are you saying? What do you mean? What did I say?
Watch your tone, Negro man.
Yeah, it's like, what did I say that was so bad, right? Did I tell the truth? Yeah. Did I say something? Was what I said? Was it not? What was it? And I guess it was the direct tone. I guess, but they will say, "Oh man, Sam, you something else," and it's like, I don't understand.
Right.
I don't understand. You said no to some money. Yeah, because I knew the strings that was attached to that money, and I wasn't going to follow through with those strings. And you ain't going to catch me up later on when I know I ain't going to do that, because all money ain't good money, right? And I've been lucky that way. Some people say lucky. I've been able to finance my conferences, even with that same kind of attitude. So I don't know. Talk to me, young man. Talk to me.
I think again, the duality that we have in our community, we have to be honest about it. That yes, we've been victims of the system since we've been here. I mean, but at the end of the day, we still have to do something about it. We can't just expect change to happen from a system if we're not willing to infiltrate that system or build systems or institutions to combat them. I've always said, institutions and systems are only replaced by institutions and systems, but they're made up of people at the end of the day. Like, sometimes I feel like we just get to this point where it gets too doom and gloom, and then these problems feel like they're bigger than life. When there are some things that we can do, some adjustments. I like that you brought that up earlier. Some adjustments that we can make that can really make a huge difference. Now, when we get to things like community violence, like we talked about earlier, the gun violence, that is all, I mean, it's out of control all across the country. That is a systemic problem that we have in the Black community. What are we going to do about it? Because right now, I'm not hearing a lot of solutions. I'm hearing a lot of energy being put into reforming police. I'm like, we ain't got enough. Right now, Minneapolis is short 250 police officers. We got shootings going on multiple shootings happening daily, multiple deaths happening throughout the week. That's just in Minneapolis. So I don't know.
Well, see, the thing is that when you even look at that, if you step back and look at that, how safe were certain communities with more police?
Well, I would say that it was less rampant than it is right now. I mean, we're getting at historic levels of high. So it, I would say that it was no more safer, but it is a lot more prevalent for the bullets to be flying today.
Right.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. And I hear you, but my point is that's one piece. But when you start looking in the internal pieces of violence, right, in our community, why are we hearing more about it? Because it's not staying in our community.
It is spreading,
Right.
but it also but at the same time, it has intensified though
Right. And I
within the community.
understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. But think
And it's
about it.
spilling over. It's spilling
Yeah.
over into
It,
the northeast Minneapolis,
and it's
and
spilling over.
downtown has
Right.
increased, and
Right.
uptown, and
Right.
Golden Valley, and I
It,
mean, but also, but it it's again duality. It's spilling over to these communities that traditionally haven't really had the gun violence problem,
right.
but it's also intensifying where it has been.
And that the reason and the intensity is we have one maybe because we don't have as many police, but the issue is if you look at coming out of COVID, everything that was a problem,
It
all
was a
of it
bigger problem.
intensified.
Absolutely,
Everything. It
everything,
was already a problem,
everything, literally
right?
everything.
Right. I mean, the thing is if you would look closer to the numbers in terms of violence and how it goes up and down and that kind of stuff, and in certain communities and even larger communities than ours, you'll see that the numbers been high all along, but it was staying inside the community, right? And it's always been a problem. And it's been a problem over the last 5 years, even more so, right? It's just that right now it's on the front page because it's all over the page, right? And I'm not saying it hasn't intensified, but the issue is it got you have a shutdown and you have a whole bunch of stuff that came together at the same time, right? What little bit of respect folks had in our community for the police got even
It's
less.
gone. Yeah, it's gone.
Right.
I don't know if there is any.
Right.
To be honest.
And so the thing is the response of COVID just amplified the housing issue, right? It amplified the disparities in terms of pay. You know, you close down factories and now you got a service community, right? And then the money didn't follow the service community, right? Now it's amplified and folks who can afford to do it ain't going back to that mess, right? What else amplified? The fact that we make very little of what we need in America. So we have to step back and really look at the amplification of how this all happened. The rich found a way to stop spending money on factories and having outside countries make the stuff, right, for cheap while they made more money, right? And was okay with that. Right now we're getting ready to have shortages in medication. We got shortages in everything because they're all made outside the country. And you know what's even worse about that? A lot of these technologies were developed here.
And exported.
Right? And so folks' greed overset what was in the best interest of our people, especially when you go from a manufacturing country to a buying country.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at this and you're a young person who's been struggling all along, right? It all appears to be bullshit. Right? I mean, no matter where it come from. So why should I care? And then on top of that is we've talked about this extensively. This whole issue around survival stress management, right? What feels good in the moment, and that's true even with this violence. We have a population of young people, and that can change at any moment, right? Who are so in such a physically and emotionally depressed state, right? Their normal is depressed. Okay.
Right.
And so to feel human and feel stimulated, they need extra stimulation.
Right.
Okay. They need extra stimulation. And then they need, and then becoming popular without being nothing, without no skills, and getting likes. Do you understand? Do you see how many times when they really want to find somebody who shot somebody, all they got to do is pay attention to their Facebook page?
Mm-hmm. There's been a couple cases solved recently just from monitoring Facebook, and
Right,
social media.
right. So the thing is terrorizing other people or not thinking about how things affect other people in a country that hasn't cared about how it affect making money, no matter how it affect other people. It's just a response to that.
Right.
People in power doing stuff that they don't care how it affects other people. We got politicians who don't care about what we're looking at that right now, right? Mm-hmm. You got a politician who says we don't want to raise taxes on the rich. What's that all about?
Mm-hmm.
To pay for stuff that we know people need. Or we don't want a policy to address clean air because I'm getting paid by the coke company. That's about that type of selfishness. And then we want to criticize folks for being selfish. What feels good in the moment without no ideal or thought of the future. And then we always talk about, you know, the children are our future. You don't give a damn about the children in the future. The kids know that.
Right. And they're responding.
Right. And so the thing is so yeah, we can talk about the new little gangs they mentioned on the other TV, but you have we talk about violence, but look in the racing cars in the street without no regard of people. There's a lot of little or in the suburbs where they get patted on the hand, where you had the TikTok challenge going in and trashing school bathrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, devious licks.
It's the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But the thing is so what's the core of that? What is the core of that? But yeah, and then you know what's so interesting about this violence thing in our community is just that if you are fully putting all your cash in external factors, even when we talk about the police, we don't have enough police or whatever, blah 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 blah. But the thing is the police is only reactionary, right? What are we gonna do on the front side, the reactionary side, and the back side, right? I mean, so we are steadily developing young people who are caring less and less about other people's needs because they don't feel like people care about theirs. Right. So we, you know, and since we are reactionary, eventually when people when it starts messing with enough people's money, there's going to be a reaction. You know, we might not have enough police, but we definitely got enough troops. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the thing is how do we, work with get serious about domestic violence? How do we get serious about those things that's going on in the house, right? How do we get serious about holding folks accountable with some compassion? You know, by the time we do hold people accountable, it's all or nothing. You know, and then because we have allowed racism in the system and that kind of stuff, our response to that is all or nothing. Right now, the true criminals out here, young criminals out here, know that the system ain't gonna do shit to them.
Yep. Exactly.
Right. And so you don't went from one extreme to another. right? Because there's definitely some folks out here that need to be taken off the damn street. But if you take them off the street, you have to work with them.
Yeah.
You can't, and our history is take folks off the street, put them in an environment, a contained environment that is just as violent or more violent at a young age, and then expect them to be something different when they get out, when you're going to punish them some more when you bring them out. No compassion. Okay, so now I got a criminal record. Now I can't get no job. Now nobody wants to rent no space to me. And so it's always all or nothing.
Yeah.
Don't do nothing for a long time, and then all of a sudden you want to lower the hammer, and then wonder why. And again, the COVID just opened that door. It was like the Wizard of Oz. We've been living in Wizard of Oz for years here in America, right? Showing you one thing and lying about everything else. You know, the land of the free. You know, and people of color knew it wasn't the land of free, but it was better than where I was at. Or as black people says, you tell me to go back to Africa. Why did I go back to Africa? I built this shit. Why I got to go back? Go back where? You know, like, this is mine. Right? Respect that. I need to respect that. Right? We live in a Wizard of Oz, and now we done found out the wizard is some old white man in the background who's scared of his own damn shadow.
Don't be talking about Biden. Come on.
Oh, see now you want to get me in trouble, and then now they're gonna start checking up on my emails and stuff. You know, they'll check up on my emails. You know, we had to make them check up on.
Come on,
you know.
I know you seen him with his fist clenched. I know you seen that. Did you see that?
Yeah.
You just. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, but that's been true. You know, and then when you messed around and put a black face in front of the old white man, all hell broke loose. Okay. And again, America has been two-faced at all the beginning from the Constitution, based on a double-edged lie.
Yeah.
Right. We the free people, and then half the folks signing the thing own people.
Right. Well, you were considered a person at that point.
But again, is that's why we have this emotional struggle with our young people. Yeah. And that's the big fear of folks. You know, you're talking about this critical race theory. That's a bullshit argument, because they don't even teach. They teach that in Harvard or whatever, that kind of stuff.
It gets on a college level. I talked about it in my sociology classes at the U.
Yeah, but basically we're talking about tell the history, how it falls. Just my babies might feel bad about being white. Well, that's on. If the truth make you feel bad about being white, so be it.
Yeah,
but that ain't the truth. Young people when I deal with young white kids, they're so happy to have somebody tell them the truth. They're almost in tears.
As a college professor that talks about racism in my psychology classes, it's surprising. It's surprising because these kids, and I'm talking about across the political spectrum too, because I teach in a very conservative school and I teach in a very liberal school, and I get the same response is that they just appreciate the objectivity and being able to have an honest dialogue.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But again, a mealy mouth Democrats and stuff, they so afraid of telling the truth because they might offend some of their own people. It's like you got to change the dialogue, man.
Yeah,
you know, fear is a dangerous thing. Fear and power is a dangerous thing in ignorant people's hands. Okay. And so the thing is you got small groups of folks dictating everything, and you don't even know how to respond. You respond with the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that the Wizard of Oz thing is probably the best example of America. Right? Smoke and mirrors. You know, who do we use the smoke and mirrors on this week?
Yeah.
Right? So they can vote against their own best interests. And what's so interesting about it, there's some bad gangsters.
Yeah.
I screw you and I convince you to blame the other guy.
Mm.
So I get in office, mess up all kind of stuff. I ain't that worried about the Democrats getting in office, because then by the time the results of the screwing comes around, they're in office. I didn't do it. And it could go both ways. But the issue is that's why we're at a critical time. All the shit done hit the fan. And we have raised a bunch of people who don't know how to think critically.
Right.
And just go with the okie doke because it was easier. Easy ain't good.
But I would slightly challenge that. I don't think that they go with it because it's easier. I think they go with it because they don't know anything else. Sometimes the absence of information is soothing.
Yeah, that's right. Because I've seen it in our own community, right?
Yeah.
Trying to give folks, we always want to talk about disparities, but one of the disparities that's produced by race, but this disparity produced by lack of information.
Yeah.
Period. And then when you try to give folks the information, they shut it down. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We got about 4 minutes or less. We done went all on the deep end, didn't get in, didn't get to our little topic. We'll
come back to it. We'll come back to it.
Yeah. And I want to thank the folks who tuned in. Our brother Greg West out there. We ain't seen you in a minute. Tim, all good, brother. How you want to end this, young man?
No, I think
I'm all hot and bothered.
It's okay. Look, it was the right time, the right message at the right time. There's a lot happening, as you just stated, but we have to, I've said this several times on this podcast. We have to be objective thinkers. We have been conditioned to think one way a lot, and when we are being objective and we're questioning things or being critical, don't get caught up in the name calling, because those shaming tactics just get you thrown off. Like, I think one of the biggest things that we can do better is to think about what's really going on and is it working? Because this stuff is getting this wild right now, and we have to admit that we've been victimized as Black folks, but we also are accountable for a lot of things that take place too. It ain't just the system. Like the shootings and stuff that are going on, like that's on us to figure out. I don't think police reform is gonna stop any of that, to be honest.
That was my point.
Like that ain't gonna work, man. This stuff is wild. And then the creativity around it is even getting, even bigger. And we have to be, I think another solution to this, which is a long-term strategy, is we have to cultivate our own political leaders. We have to get people involved in this and support them. And I just don't see that happening. I think we get caught into celebrities need to speak up because they're from your hometown. And that's not gonna do anything, because these dudes is just young and they don't know anything really much either. Like think about your average multi-millionaire athlete. They're like 26 years old. I don't think they know a lot about what's going on in the community to be the community activists we want them to be. We need real political leaders, and we need to cultivate those people and support those people as we get going forward. But a short-term solution is we got to figure out a way to rebuild our commitment to families. And because right now this stuff is getting crazy. Like, so I'm gonna say that I'm paying attention to major cities all across the nation. I've subscribed to damn near every news channel you can think of, and every day, Sam, I'm getting a new media piece on some kind of violence, and the violence is getting crazy. Seen a story that I don't know if you've seen this, but they put out a public service kind of warning to ride sharing companies, so Uber and Lyft, to be to pay more attention, because we've had a spike in robberies from Uber and Lyft drivers. And the example that they had, this is crazy. Well, the example that they had was, it was a Somali man driver. He got called to I think somewhere in like Golden Valley. The car pulled up behind him, blocked him in. They got in the car. They said, "This Uber for us." They got in the car. They robbed him at gunpoint. They didn't shoot him. They robbed him at gunpoint. And then he didn't have any cash on him because he's driving Uber. Everything's electric. They take his phone and they put the gun in his head and told him to put the password in and transfer the money that he has in his account via Cash App to them. I'm like, this is getting crazy. So with that, be safe out there because this stuff is getting wild. And if you look like a lick, they're gonna take the advantage of it. So stay visual. The devious licks happen on all levels. And right now it's costing innocent, not I don't want to say innocent people because everybody I think deserves to live, but people who ain't even in this lifestyle are losing their life on a daily basis due to people not giving a damn. And COVID, yes, has something to do with it. Racism, white supremacy has something to do with it. But we're entering a new dimension of survival stress management where it's go time at any moment. And broad daylight don't matter. It's just like we're here and whatever happens, happens. And if you lose your life, that's on you. So with that,
so
wrap it up?
I see we got you all stirred up,
well, not as stirred up as you, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's still
because I care,
back to
man.
Like I said, it still come back to it started oozing outside of the community.
Yeah.
I mean, again, a lot of this stuff was going on in the community before COVID, right?
Absolutely.
But it oozed out of the community. And since we went over time anyway, one of the things that it brings up, and this is going to be a wild story, is, over north, they were doing work on the streets over North Minneapolis. So they had you going out of, all over, right? And one of the things I realized is that there's a lot of white folks live over north.
Yes.
Walking their dogs.
Yeah. I mean, some nice houses in the cut. Yeah.
I'm not even talking about nice houses. I'm just talking about a lot of white folks walking their dogs and like there ain't nothing going on. I'm talking about not, near what we see. And it's like, wow. They didn't seem scared.
Well, they ain't the lick. That's why.
But again,
they ain't the lick.
Think about that.
We're still robbing ourselves.
And we ain't even just, but see, a lot of that violence ain't about robbery. Right? A lot of that violence ain't about robbery in our community. The violence outside of our community ends up being more about robbery.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about disrespect.
And just think about that. When you got folks in your community, white folks in your community feel comfortable enough to walk their damn dogs and walk down the street with their kids and that kind of stuff and feel safer than you do.
Damn. Man, we need to
think about
it. we need to clip that. Dang. That's a shame, man. That's so sad. And you're right.
Think about it.
The internal violence it's all about who disrespected me here, there, and when I see you, it's on site. But outside of the community, you're right. It is about. I never thought about it like that. But that's what I've seen. It's like outside of that, it's about robbery. But internally, it's all about it's not even about money or drug territory or none of that no more. It's just about straight disrespect, which is the bare minimum. Like my level of concern with being disrespected is the same level of your life.
Well, not even disrespect. This disrespect for life that looks like me.
Yeah, anti-blackness is a killer.
Yeah. Okay. Damn. I thought I'd get that in since
we might have to come back on that one. Damn. Yeah, I mean, but that's what I see. I mean, when I managed, that program, I'm not gonna say the name of it, but when I managed that program, that's all we dealt with.
Right.
It's just handling how people felt disrespected. I mean, it might not have been true, just like I felt it.
Hey. When I do a class on disrespect, I probably should do one this week. I said, if you got more reasons, you got more ways that you can be disrespected than you can be loved, you got a problem.
Ooh. All right, Sam. you hit below the belt too many times, bro. We're closing this one out. All right. Damn. This is another installment of the Hillen Brothers podcast. I don't know if we healing or hurting after Sam dropped 2 bombs at the end. But we will be back next Sunday. Be sure to share the episode and subscribe to the Hillen Brothers podcast YouTube channel. We are out. Peace.